Good morning, everybody. I'm looking forward to my friend Tara joining us today. And today we're going to be talking about energy, negative energy, positive energy, the physicality of it, the energetic state of it, all of that neat jazz. So, Tara is here. Should be on any second. Dun, 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 dun. I love being able to do these live streams. Tara's over in Australia. She's a 14 different time difference. And we found each other online, and we're definitely connected on a deeper level. Hey, Tara.
Hey, Tara. Hi, Rita, darling. How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm really good.
Are you? That's great.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my camera right. So let me just make sure. There we go.
Okay, no problem.
Oh, there we go. I have to sit back.
Ta-da!
Now we're at the same. I didn't want it to be like totally zoomed up on my face,
so they could see every pore. Yeah, and every.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything
Oh,
going
we don't
on.
want that. No, we don't want that.
I know. It's odd when I do my live streams. I actually enjoy. I like watching myself. I'm like, so that's what I look like when I.
No, it's amazing because we do so many lives. We do get used to looking at our face. It was a very uncommon occurrence many years ago. We never looked at ourselves in the in the camera.
Funny.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Well, thank
really
you for being here. I certainly appreciate it. So today we're talking about energy, which is super exciting for me because I've been dealing with people having negative energy ever since I was very small, because that's what was in my family. But the version of negative energy in my family wasn't explosive. It wasn't, verbal. It was all very silent and very compressed. And so you never quite knew what was going on. It wouldn't come out in a big shout or a big fight. It would come out through dead silence and everybody needing to be silent. And because I'm empathic, you can still feel negative energy even when no one is saying a word, and you can feel it. And that buildup of it is what then starts to turn into physical and mental health problems. So what's been kind of your experiences with negative energy in your life?
It was so interesting listening to your story because I was feeling it in my body, a lot of that. See, I still think we're the same person, Rita. It's very interesting. I'm the Australian version of you and you're the American version of me. It's interesting. We have very similar, just from what you said, huge similarities. Because I know a lot of the things that occurred when I was young was the same. It was that sense that I didn't know quite why I could sense things that were unspoken. It was always a thing of I felt like I knew what was going on with everyone and the dynamics, even though I was young. And it was, it's that case of the old soul in the young body thing, because I knew that some things were not quite functional, healthy, and I could identify it from a young age. And it was a strange experience because always feeling a little bit on the outside, always feeling like you've got this whole other especially being empathic, you've got this whole other internal world going on. And you feel like there's almost like little scripts that even though they're not speaking, there's little scripts that each of them that they're running around in your head, and it can really, as a young child, make you question your sanity sometimes. But as we learn, and what I would always encourage people who are empathic to do is understand what it is. Because once you can understand it, you can grow with it and not be in resistance with it. And I think as a child, and it sounds like your experience too, we were in resistance a lot of the time, which was what was going on. And suppressing it is a big survival tactic as an empath.
And
Suppressing it, you know?
disassociation. I got really good at
Yeah.
disassociating from things.
Yeah. Same here. Yes. It was almost like how do I describe it? Like an ever-present awkwardness and uncomfortable sense of self. You know, always feeling like I was just kind of 10 steps behind, but almost 10 steps ahead at the same time. It was an odd paradox, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Was that your experience too?
Yeah,
that outsider?
Yeah, my experience was I felt very responsible for everybody in my life.
Yeah.
Because I could intellectualize things, you know, and it's like there were two of me. There was the very deep inner part that was intellectual and would stay disconnected, and then there was all this physical stuff going on. You know, I would cry at the drop of a hat. You know, my skin always felt like it was crawling. I had stomach issues. I could never eat. And but I was always coming from that disassociated place, you know, which then if you study Buddhism, you know, Buddhism is all about that observer, you know, observing what's going on. And so that really helped me cultivate the ability to be present with uncomfortable feelings and start to figure out how to not be so uncomfortable. So that's why this is such a great topic, because when you have that level of stress when you're young, you have decades to figure it out, which is kind of cool, because now I've got all of these really wonderful human beings around me who have no idea, who are now in toxic relationships, you know, either spouses or children or coworkers, and they have no idea what's going on. They feel blindsided. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've been dealing with this since before I was born. Here, let me give you some tips. You know, and so I ended up ahead of the game because I had that life experience early on. But the problem is when it makes me a little arrogant, because then I look for relationships at times that will challenge me in that way. I'm like, yeah, I want to be challenged, you know, so I'll develop connections and close relationships with people who haven't learned how to manage their anxiety or depression or chemical imbalances or poor life habits. They haven't learned how to manage those yet. And I'm like, hey, I'll be your friend. Why don't you come hang out with me? And
let me show you the way.
Let me show you it. And it's fun, you know, for a little bit. But then at times when they're having a bad time, you know, it's like, oh man, I really don't want to deal with this again. I don't want to be sucked into your, you know, your struggle.
Circus, monkeys in the circus, I call it.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
And the inevitable response is, not my monkeys, not my circus. No, away, away.
But you can't always help it. I mean, because when I am in the physical presence, especially the physical presence of somebody that I care about, who is struggling internally, even if they don't say anything, even if they're completely neutral on the outside, I can feel that turmoil. And it's so difficult to be around and stay present with it, because I'm like, I know you're not showing everybody that you are this distraught, but my skin is crawling. You are very upset. And how can I survive this? How can I stay grounded in my own positive energy? You know, especially if, let's say, you took one car and you're driving together. And there's no place to escape. You're like, what am I gonna do? You know, pull over now. I can't stand the fact that you're feeling negative, even if you're not saying anything. I mean, it's crazy. And then it can take me a couple days to detox from that emotional and energetic overload. Does that happen to you?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting what you said about the two identities, because, and particularly if you're interacting with, I'll go back to that old soul in a young body thing. And I think no matter what age we are, I feel that we can always have a discomfort around the age we are when we're an old soul, because people always, and it's just human nature, they're always going to judge the package that you come in. But what I've learned is that we are really only ever in resistance with ourselves. And if we're comfortable, the world will just adjust, and really if we're not comfortable with who we are, the people around us are going to reflect back that discomfort. And then if we're not present to, the reasons why we're feeling uncomfortable. And you mentioned about the two identities. It's very true. When you're an empath, you see two versions of people all the time. You see the person that they really are. You might get glimpses. They may be themselves sometimes, or they may just, you can see through all that facade. And then you're dealing with the fake one. So you're dealing with the real version and the fake. And so it can become very hard to know how to talk to people when you really feel like you know what's going on with them. And that's a struggle that I know I found a lot, is having to accept where people are at and not try and be, what's the word? Like trying to almost be 10 steps ahead to try to guide them. Because what I've learned being an empath is, especially in toxic relationships, in the end, it's not my responsibility. As much as, we're so willing to be responsible for people, it's not our responsibility to fix anybody. And that's the hardest thing when we're really enmeshed in that healer role to disconnect from. Because we tie it up with like everything. We tie it up with our ability to, we go, am I a good person? And it's all that right and wrong stuff. Should I help them because I know what's going on with them? It's that, autonomy versus, how much. And actually, I spoke to someone the other day around, sometimes it's helping someone to not help. How do you feel about that statement?
I feel
it helps. I feel, and you don't help.
Actually very good about that, because there's a couple backstories for me, because of what had happened to me. And I didn't only have like two different versions of reality inside my head. I had like 12 different personalities. And and they would, I would liken it to television, where I could just turn it to the right channel. And I would have people, I spent a lot of time in spiritual circles, and I'd have people who were very spiritual and very also judgmental at the same time. And there was this idea that they felt many times that I was lying, because my internal world was different from my external, my external presentation. However, they were both true. Both versions of me were true.
Yeah.
So the internal world, what I was feeling that they could pick up on, and what I was projecting, were the same me. They were just different versions of me, and they were both true. And so I had a hard time, because I knew I was more than just one experience, especially because it was my dad that his external facade was very stoic and quiet, but his internal was very chaotic. But they were both true. It was who he wanted to be, how he chose to behave, that aspect of him warring with the piece of how he felt. And so For me, the most healing part was when I could recognize that both were true. Both were true.
Yeah.
And they were all
Yeah.
parts and pieces of something that's much bigger. And so the best way that I can help someone is to acknowledge that all of the different aspects of them are real, are who they really are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that acceptance for people who are feeling in such conflict because they're dealing with depression or anxiety or chemical imbalances tends to be what is most helpful for me, because then I'm not struggling with two sides of me which are having different conversations. I'm accepting both of them. There's a quote that always said, someone is truly, let's say, mature or evolved when they can hold two completely different opposite opinions at the same time. So you can be two or three or four or five or six different people, and they're all the same thing. They're all authentic. So for me, it was coming to terms and being okay with the authenticity of all the different parts of me, not trying to cut them off, not trying to say this is bad, so I'm going to get rid of you. You know, and so then it allows me to do the same thing with the other person, to say, I realize that this is all of you. You know, and I appreciated the fact that my dad would come home and go straight to bed, you know, and wouldn't, you know, yell at us or verbally abuse us in any way. He would just vacate the situation, and they were both true. And so I learned the ability to be grateful for people who are struggling and trying to overcome that struggle through their behavior, you know, and most people see that as a lie. But in reality, for me, it's they're showing me who they are, all these aspects of who they are. And if I want to help in any way, it's about accepting who they are. No, the problem for me is I can accept who they are and I can accept who I am. I just don't always like how my nervous system reacts, you know, to their intensity. Do you know what I mean? Because they tend to be very intense people because they've got this war going on inside of them. And the intensity at times can be very overwhelming for me.
Well, that's true. And empaths can, you know, as much as we can white light ourselves or energetically protect ourselves, sometimes there's no stopping that infiltration of when you're in someone's space and you pick up something that they're, you know, if they've got stomach, like what you were talking about, stomach problems, you know, digestion problems, and you pick that up. I often get intense, sharp pains in the back, in the neck, not even my injuries, and it's other people's stuff. And it can happen very, very quickly. And sometimes there's no stopping that. And I can understand that you know, that whole thing about when you're an empath, there is a great gift to it, but at the same time it can, I don't like to use the word curse, but it can impact, you know, impact when we just least expect it. And it sounds like that's what was happening for you, is that just complete overwhelm.
Well,
and it's dealing with that.
I have the tendency to love a sense intense of self people.
That is grounded. Yeah. Say that again.
Oh, I said, well, and I have the tendency to love intense people because I love the intensity, you know, when they're flowing. Yeah. And then their intensity can be overwhelming when they're in that inner conflict like that. So how I've learned to protect my energy by making smart choices for myself, by doing good self-care, by making sure I have all the tools and resources that I need to limit my time at times with people, you know, and recognize that I'm an adult who is not trapped, who's not helpless, who's not cornered, and I can set boundaries and limits and say, okay, now I've reached my limit, so we're done. You know, until your intensity is a little bit, you know, more manageable. when you're in this state. And so I
Yes.
make sure I do really great self-care on the physical level, and with knowing what experiences I want to have and what experiences I don't
Yeah.
want to have, and respecting that, and not putting myself into a position as often where I'm having an experience that, you know what, I'm not interested in having anymore. I'm not interested in going through
Yeah.
that deep angst. I've spent a lot of years doing that, and
Mm.
so since there's nothing wrong with the person being in deep angst, I feel no need to heal them in any way. I just sort of be like, okay, and when you're ready to talk to me, you can contact me. I'll be right here.
Exactly.
Brene Brown said,
yeah, knowing the limits. Yeah, knowing your limits and
yeah,
your boundaries is important, is really important.
yeah,
It's I guess, yeah, no, I agree. And I guess how I've learned to protect myself over time is not buy into the guilt.
okay,
And what I mean by that is, I think people who are displaying, and look, we've all got the ability, I believe, to be healthy and unhealthy in our behavior. I'm sure we're all guilty of toxic behavior ourselves.
yeah,
Because
we are.
we're not immune to, yeah, we're not immune to it. But I guess how I've learned to protect myself, yeah, when I'm in a job that requires me to be present for people, a lot, is I don't buy into the guilt. And what I mean by that is that people who are displaying toxic behaviors, what they sometimes do is they will shuffle between being the victim, and then when they feel that you're not giving them enough attention, they go from victim to aggressor. And then what I used to do is buy into that. I thought, oh gosh, I haven't given them enough of my time. And oh my gosh, I'm not doing my job properly. Or, oh no, I'm not being a good enough friend. And so what it was is they would play on my wounding. And so I had to really become really comfortable and aware of when I was being triggered, and also starting to tell myself a positive story, that like affirmations, like I am good enough, I am doing enough, and I don't need to save everyone, and their problems are their responsibility. And it comes back to responsibility. And I think you raised a great point about that. Empaths sometimes feel really responsible because part of their life purpose is to be of service. But I don't think being of service means to sacrifice ourselves. I've come to learn over many hard lessons in life that it's not about sacrificing yourself. You have to fill your own cup, as they say, but you have to recognize that it isn't your job to save people. Your job as a healer, psychic or whatever you do, your person who holds a space for others, your job is to help other people help themselves. And that was a huge lesson, over time, that I think many people go through, is that, and particularly in our family units, whether that be your own childhood family or the family you've created through marriage and children yourself, is that, and as women, and Glenn Close said it really good at the Golden Globes, that we're expected to be nurturers, because we're women, but somewhere in there we have our own goals, dreams, desires, needs, and I think it's self-care and energetic protection is about honoring what that is. And we can get really lost sometimes in trying to help others. But as I said before, I think sometimes not helping is helping them, because it's allowing them to help themselves. So that's how I do it. I just don't buy into, if they're trying to pull me in out of pulling the heartstrings, I observe it now and I go, if I step away, I'm actually helping them, and that's what I have to tell myself.
Right. And
It
that's
can be really hard to do.
That's the fun thing is, you know, I came to
Yeah.
terms with, I started with me, you know, because I had to do a lot of forgiveness work around some abuse outside of my family and some other things that went on. And I really had to find the silver lining in everything. You know, how did this help me? How did this evolve me? How did this make me better and happier? How did this make me stronger? And I had to go through that in order to do my forgiveness piece. What it did on the other side of that is I don't feel sorry for people anymore. And I can see the positive benefits of the struggle that they're going through. I can be like, wow, this is great. You're going to get so uncomfortable that you're going to figure this out, you know, or I'm like, wow, this is awesome that you're going through this, you know, and it can be very, so I lack that feeling sorry for people. I'm like, yeah, this is really hard. What are you going to do? How are you going to handle this? You know, and that neutral space of curiosity has, you know, to me is really, really healing, because I'm not telling somebody who's struggling that they're bad for struggling. I'm saying, wow, I know how hard this is, but the struggle is how we evolve. And so I can step back and not feel the need to rescue people, because I know they have to go through this struggle to get to the next stage in life.
Yeah. And, you know, and I say to people sometimes when they, you know, tell me the hard stuff, I go, look how strong you are for getting through it. And then they go, oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that. Because I think people can get lost in the struggle.
Yes.
But they don't celebrate the triumph. They don't celebrate the fact that they have survived it. You know, it's that survivor thing of, and then thriving. You know, we first survive and then we thrive. But we have to kind of firstly survive.
We have to adapt,
you know, but we can survive,
you know, find our way to adapt. And human beings are the most adaptable, you know, we are so adaptable to situations. And so, yeah, I tend to not always be the seemingly most compassionate and kind person, because I'm like, wow, that's got to really suck. What are you going to do about that? You know,
but it normalizes it too.
Yes,
like, it normalizes it. If you're saying, like, you know, if you're saying, oh, that's not that hard, well, you're lying to the person. Like, I always, I'm like you. I just go, that sounds really hard.
Yes,
just name it up.
Yes. What are you gonna do? Wow.
Yeah. And honesty is good.
People tend to find their own answers then. You know, when I put it back on them, it gets them out of the place of fight or flight and into the place of rational thinking again. And then they're able to see their way through it. It's that chronic fight or flight that keeps people feeling so uncomfortable, I think. That and poor daily health habits keep people feeling mentally and emotionally disturbed, you know, because they don't have good, healthy habits in their life that nourish them and keep them more stable. They do things which will make them feel, you know, crazier. They don't stay hydrated. They don't get their fiber. They don't, you know, get the nourishment they need. They don't take time to meditate. They don't take time to move. And then, of course, we're going to end up with problems like depression and anxiety, because a lot of those are very physically based. And
I think also, Rita, though, you know, in this our society is about, a lot of the time, about instant gratification. You know, it's like people want happiness now. They want those highs, but you know, I've learned not to chase highs or fear the lows anymore. Like, for me, it's about the middle ground. And it sounds like what you're saying with the, you know, all of the habits, those nourishing habits, that to me is the middle ground. It's cultivating long-term behaviors that are going to bring you back to a grounded sense, not sort of chasing, you know, I'll be happy when, oh, that's a dangerous motive. I'll be happy when this happens. And, you know, it's That's really what it is.
Well, there's
You know,
very concrete,
people have to,
there's very concrete physical things we can do to protect our energy. And a
Yeah.
big piece of that is making sure you get what you need. And when you don't feel like,
Yeah.
you know, you're inflamed, and when you don't feel like your shoulder hurts or whatever, then when you're at as good a place as possible physically, a lot of stuff doesn't bother me. I'm able to stay very grounded.
Yeah.
It's when
Yep.
I slack on my health habits that then I start
Yep.
to become more sensitive. I can't handle the toxic energy around me as much. But for me, I always came from the physical place. But what I like about you is that you come from a more energetic place. So how have you learned to protect yourself or to clear negative energy or cultivate your positive energy?
Yeah, and look, I resonate with all of that physical stuff too, and you know, I certainly, you know, I value sleep heaps, you know, and quality sleep. I really value, food, you know, good food, and I pretty much avoid alcohol. I mean, I know when I had a glass of wine the other night, it didn't agree with me, so I tend to avoid it. I just know it doesn't really help me in any way. But energetically, yeah, it's a good question. Obviously, because as a psychic medium, I deal with energy a lot. Energy, I think, starts pretty much in the mind and the thoughts and the words that we tell ourselves. I mean, even before that, it is that feeling in the bodies. But, you know, the way that your body's feeling affects your mind, the way that the mind is operating affects the body. So it's a constant thing. So you really just have to start somewhere. So, you know, what you said is great about, you know, nutrition and exercise and sleep. They're good steps. Energetically, you know, when, you know, you're just, you know, riding on the bus and you know, you can't go for a run, or you don't have any food or access to that, if you're in, I always say to people, make sure it's something that you can gravitate to very easily. And this is why, for me, I'm a big believer in affirmations. Now, it's not because like you do one affirmation and things are going to magically fix themselves. The brain works like a feedback loop. So we have to, if we're going on a negative loop cycle in our minds, we have to interject it. It's almost like we have to just stop that way of thinking and shift it. And how we do that, and I always say this to people, is say the opposite. You know, if you're saying to yourself in your mind, I can't do anything right. That's an example. You know, this always happens to me. I can't do anything right. Or, you know, everybody always leaves me. You know, some story, and we don't even realize how much we're saying it. I always encourage people to say the opposite and start with a what if. What if I am good enough? What if the next relationship actually works? What if I do get that job? Hey, what if it actually turns out really, really great? What it does is it challenges your energy, because the vibration of words, this is why I'm a big believer in words, because words are energy, just like money is energy, you know, like it's like we want to earn money through ethical means rather than not non-ethical means, you know. It's that whole TV series Dirty Money, you know, it's the same thing, like dirty thoughts. That sounds really wrong when I said that then, but what I mean is like, you know, words that have, like they did an experiment with plants, like they had, I think it was plants, where they put the word love and the word hate on the plant, and, you know, they told the plant, like, I hate you and all this stuff, and then they told the other plant, I love you. And, you know, plants respond to words, so we're the same. So if we're saying something to ourselves like, I love who I am, the vibration of the word love sounds much lighter than if we say, I hate myself. The word hate is probably one of the most lower vibrational energetic words out there in the human language. the word love is its polar opposite. So that's a good place to start, is to, if you're finding your self-talk is really harsh and you're not being very kind to yourself, I always encourage people to talk to yourself kindly. And that's where I start energetically. On another note, if you believe in angels, Archangel Michael is a great one. And I say the affirmation, I cancel, clear, delete that person's energy off my body. And then what I do is I send it back to them with love and light, because we don't want to create negative karma for ourselves. So we just, we move it off us. And so they're just little strategies that I do. And I find it effective because I'm somebody who has suffered, really, really badly, depression and anxiety. And I'm very open about that because I think it removes the stigma when we just normalize it, because it is an experience that many people go through. So in that sense, I think we could call it normal, even though it doesn't feel normal in the time when you got it. But that helped me. I'm not saying it's going to magically fix things, but it's a great place to start. And like anything, if you keep doing it and keep being mindful of when you're going down that negative cycle and just flipping it around and practice it and see when you say, I love who I am, how that feels, rather than, oh, I hate, it's just such a different vibration. So words are really, and really, actually, this is a cool fact. Spelling, right? You know how we spell words? Look at the root of that word, spell. And words are spells. So if you think about it, we're almost casting spells when we speak, because we're creating the life we want to live through the words that we say about who we are and the vision we want to create for ourselves. So I always think of them as mini little spells. That's what I think is really cool about the English language, is that it is really, spells, to get all practical magic on you here. But yeah, so that's what I do, little tips.
So one of the strategies for changing self-talk that I've worked with is, a lot of times if you try to go from a negative thought to a positive thought, like, oh, I'm never going to figure this out. I'm such a failure. Why should I bother? And then I flip it to, this is going to be great. I'm going to figure this out. I'm so strong and capable. What tends to happen, it happens for a lot of people, is that's too big of a cognitive leap.
Yeah.
And, to go from, the negative to the positive.
Oh, definitely.
And you start saying, well, that's not true. I'm a complete idiot. And so the strategy I use for people is I say, start softer with, like, wouldn't it be great if I were, if I felt peaceful? Wouldn't it be cool if I felt good about myself? And I start with that because it's a lower bar of entry, to start thinking in a new way. And then once I start getting comfortable with that, then it's smaller steps, because, a lot of people, I've had a close friend of mine where I would be very no, you're awesome. You are so smart. You always figure these things out. And the first response is, no, I don't. I can think of all the times that I screwed everything up. And so that slight shift of making it easier to believe. Wouldn't it be great if I were smart? Wouldn't it be awesome if I could handle this? I really hope that I can.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice? And then it kind of evolves from there until you get to the point where you're like, yeah, there are times I've been able to do this. This has been okay. I am doing well. And it's made it a lot easier.
Yeah. And that's brilliant what you've said, because it's so true, because our ego will fire up when we say something. It's almost like that cheerleader thing of like, you're fine, it'll be great. That can almost be like, it's almost like a denial thing if we're just flipping straight away. And you make a good point. And that's why I would encourage people also to find sometimes more of a general statement that just helps to calm you in the moment. So I remember when I went through a massive breakup a while ago, and I was really having a hard time just feeling any love for myself because of that person didn't love me, right? Because I was tying my self-worth up with whether they love me or not. And I discovered a Louise Hay affirmation, which I really liked. And it was really grounding. And the affirmation was, I am lovable because I exist. And I like that. I am lovable because I exist. And that was believable for me in that moment. Because even though I didn't think I was amazing in that moment, I knew I existed. So then I thought, well, if the universe created me, they must think there's something I can do.
Right.
You know, so you're right. You have to go with the little steps that because affirmations, I believe, if they hit your heart, like, because it's realistic as well, and it matches where you're willing to go. You make a great point. It's definitely not just about like going, yay for you, rah rah rah, like a cheerleader, and then it creates more resistance. Absolutely, like 100% agree with you there. Yeah.
I've been getting more into meditation lately as well, and because I come from a physical point of view with my work, a lot of it is what's the physicality of emotion. And so for me, it's important to be present with whatever I'm feeling, allow it, and then allow that energy to move through me so that I can flush it out. You know, so what I've got a close friend who's struggling right now, and when I'm near them, I can feel that struggle. And so I accept the fact that they're in the struggle, that this is hard for them, and I stay present with it, and I don't attach any judgment or thought, or if I do, I don't give it a lot of credence. You know, I don't believe it. Like, it's like, you know, this is horrible. I just don't believe it. I just let it be there. And if I'm present with that feeling, then it's allowed to come and allowed to go, and I can detox it. You know, when I'm trying to resist something that I feel, then it gets, those chemicals of emotion get reabsorbed into my body, just waiting to be triggered by something else. Just waiting. So every time I'm triggered, I like to look at it as a healing, because it's an opportunity for all those stored emotions that have been lurking under the surface and causing, you know, stomach problems, heart problems, or a headache or whatever. It allows it to, those things to get put back into the bloodstream so that I can get them out of my body. I can breathe them out. I can cry them out, and physically get rid of the thing, you know, some of the things which are causing me to feel so uncomfortable. So I do a lot of presence work every morning, where I take, you know, at least 10-15 minutes, and I'm present with whatever I'm feeling, just so that I can move it through me, so that it doesn't build up. And if I don't let it build up, then it's a lot more manageable.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, sorry. I couldn't hear that last bit. Sorry.
Does that make sense?
There was a bit that cut out there.
Oh, okay.
There's a little bit that cut out there, but I did hear most of it. And you're right, that acceptance, immersion, like, as you said, just being present to it, and then just allowing it to release. You know, I have clients that apologize when they cry in front of me. And I'm like, you have nothing to be sorry about. I said, it's so healthy to that you're letting it out. Like, you know, because we get pressure, I think, in life to present a certain way, and especially on social media. Like, you know, there's so much stuff out there of present this way, and then you'll get more likes, and it's just, a lot of that is really just fear-based. I think that more people, I believe, resonate with like realness, rawness, you know, the unedited version of ourselves. You know, like, life isn't like a perfect movie. We just have to, and I remember we've had conversations before about this releasing stuff, and that really impacted me when you said that, because it was a great way of looking at it, that you know, everything that gets stored up, the triggering point is the point of release. And I really love the way you said that, and that really shifted something in me. And so thank you for saying it, because yeah, it was very the power of your words, you know, casting magical spells. It's powerful. Like, release is acceptance, and acceptance is letting go of judgment. And like, I really think that judgment is one of the biggest causes of resistance and suffering, you know, and it's tied up in this thing of, we feel we have to present a certain way, and you know, getting locked into perfection. I think perfection is really just, it's some concept that we think we need to behave a certain way to get a projected outcome, and I think in life we just need to stop being so outcome based, and really just be more like what you're saying, present moment awareness is the only way you're really gonna really release everything, isn't it? Otherwise you're just gonna suppress it further and further, and it'll come out eventually.
Right.
You know, our body's like, what is it, 90% water or something? It's bound to come out. We're all water.
Well, and it turns into, it really does, suppressing our emotions and what we're feeling is directly linked to our immune system being low, the ability for circulation in our body. We'll store all those, we'll store all the emotional chemicals, which will cause inflammation, and our nervous system will shut down to different parts of our body. And so then cellular waste starts to build up too. It all starts to build up. And so suppressing how we feel or trying to change it too quickly, you know, without that slower, gradual process, we end up with healing crises if we try to push too fast, too hard, where it's all dumped into our system. But then if we don't allow it at all, then it comes out with every version of illness that you can come up with. And it's finding ways to not judge how we feel or how anybody else feels, and looking for ways to move the energy through us so that it doesn't negatively impact us. You know, those have been my two biggest ones, is just relax and be okay with how you feel, and let yourself feel it, because the faster you do, the faster you'll get to the other side, and you'll get that wisdom and the understanding that you couldn't get before.
Yeah, that's really true. It's really true. It's all a process, and I think you know, being kind to ourselves no matter what, and but at the same time, you know, I've as someone who's struggled with negative self-talk, sometimes I just almost allow it to just flare up, because I think that is a releasing too. Because I remember I used to sort of try to you know, just either ignore it, or like what you said, when we flip it around too soon, when what we really just, like if it's anger, for example, you know, and obviously there's healthy and unhealthy ways to express anger. Like, I wouldn't advocate going out and, you know, being violent with someone or anything like that. There's healthy ways to express our anger, but I mean, one of those ways is, like, you know, it's okay to, in your own space, you know, swear and yell and like get it out. Like, it's all part of us. Like, we're not these perfect people that are, you know, and I would especially say people like us on a public platform, we're not perfect. You know, and we all have it, and that is totally okay, I think, in my book.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay.
And we act as role models. I mean, one of the reasons I'm authentic with things that I do is because I had a mentor who was a 350-pound Ojibwe who clearly had an eating problem, you know, eating too much. And he would yell at his dog, and he, you know, call his grandkids gay. And I mean, he would do all sorts of really awful things. And he was internationally respected for being a peacemaker. And what he did for me was, I mean, he traveled all over the world. He went to The Hague. He went, you know, all over Europe. He was asked by everybody to do blessings, you know, on the land. People, he had,
Yeah.
you know, people would come from all over the world to hang out where he lived because him and his wife owned a motel, you know. And so you know,
Yeah.
this week there's somebody from Amsterdam, and next week there's somebody who, you know, discovered nuclear physics. I mean, really, it was the sorts of people. And he
Yeah.
taught me that the message is not the person, you know, that we are people,
Yeah.
and we have to separate the message from sometimes the behavior. And that's
Yeah.
kind of circles back around to when people who are sensitive would be like, you're lying. I know you're lying. And I'm like, no, I'm terrified of you and I'm not showing it. And you're seeing it as a lie.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's
Yeah.
because I'm terrified of you. And I am looking cool on the
Yeah.
outside, you know? And so it really gave me permission to, that I could make a big impact in the world, even if
Yeah.
you're a human being. And in fact, it's more important
Yeah.
for me to role model how to be a human being than it is for me to role model
100%.
some level of perfection that just doesn't exist, didn't exist for Mother Teresa, didn't exist for Martin Luther King, didn't exist for Gandhi. They all had their humanness, you know, and I think it's important to accept our humanity.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that embracing our humanity is the gateway to divinity. And it's interesting what you say, because I've come across people that, you know, when they've spiritually awoken, they have a hard time grounding themselves with people who haven't awoken. And, you know, I say to them that awareness and awakening and enlightenment is about understanding that it's all part of the whole, and that being enlightened doesn't make you better. See, I think that's where ego can creep into spirituality, is where people think, they're enlightened, I'm a guru, I'm going to get all these worshippers and followers. And it isn't about that, I think. At least I think spirituality, the genuine kind, is embracing all of that, embracing the messiness and the humanity. Because if we don't, I mean, that's why we're here. I mean, this is the thing, it's like, I always say to people, like, if you're in a body, you chose to come to Earth, so you might as well embrace it. Because quite often we get so up here in the ether that we go, I don't want to be on Earth, I want to be somewhere else where it's spiritual, you know. And it's missing the point that we're here for a reason. We gotta embrace everything that makes, and there's so many beautiful things about being human as well, that I think in the pursuit of spirituality, sometimes, you know, it can get lost and forgotten, that aspect of it too, that, you know, we are, yes, reminder, we're all humans still. You know, we've all got the days, the good days, the bad days, and, you know, everything, all other shades in between. I think, you know, it's all a rainbow.
A friend of mine would call it a spiritual bypass. And, you know, because they would bypass their humanity. And then because of that, because they were disassociated from their humanity, they didn't have true compassion and understanding for anybody else who was living life. And I believe, from my point of view, from science is starting to show that everything is completely interconnected with wavelengths, that between me and you, I could walk across, you know, and go and hold you from the energy that's between us. And if we are all different aspects of all that is, then when we start to deny or cut off parts of ourselves because they're uncomfortable or we don't like them. And, you know, and I may say, because I don't like you, because you're representing this thing, which I think is bad. Let's say toxic energy.
Yeah.
You're representing this thing. This is bad. I want you out of my life. I don't want anything, you know, I don't want you to have anything to do with me. We're also denying ourselves getting closer to that experience of God. Because when I can look at you and love you the way that you are, set boundaries for myself, of course, but you know, of what I'm wanting to experience. But when I can look at you and love you unconditionally, I've reclaimed that part of my soul. And so when someone makes me feel in conflict, that's one of the reasons I'm drawn to them, because I'm like, I want the gifts that you bring. I want to reclaim this part of me. And what do I need to do in order to love you unconditionally? And sometimes it means I have to stay away from you and only interact with you from a certain distance, you know, because your energy is too much for me. You know, it's too intense for me to handle, because I haven't been doing my good self-care work. So I like to look at those conflicts and dissonances as in, how can I love them? And not just love them in the fluffy bunny kind of way, but love them as in a very real way. Like, I don't like that you're doing that. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't mean I love you any less, but it doesn't feel good. And so when you do this, this is what I'm going to do, so that you can learn relationship skills and you can learn social skills, because action consequence. You're doing this. This is how I'm going to respond. If you don't want that, then you do need to adjust how you relate to me.
Well, it's separating the behavior from the person. And, and like, to bring up a hard topic, in the case of, like, if you watch those documentaries about prisoners, you know, in the prison system, and how the transformation they go through from not being remorseful to, you know, maybe they get off drugs and all the rest, and then they move to that point of awareness of what they've done. You know, and then you could argue, and it's a touchy subject, but you could argue that everybody is capable of good and evil. It's the choice. It's and let's be real here. Not everyone grows up with the same circumstances. Some people get dealt a really bad hand when they grow up. And you know, it's that thing of, is potential something that's within, or is it nurtured? Is it something? And that's the thing, is that I think it's all about the choices you make. But what drives people to make those choices can, and quite often, is because of upbringing or lack of opportunity. And you see these when you, and like, I find those documentaries fascinating, because to see when they're given opportunities to better themselves, like education, when they put education in the system, when they put things in that helps them to know themselves as something other than a criminal. Because to be a criminal is because you've engaged in choices that lead you to have that label. So, you know, it's like that's the thing, is that it's, everybody does deserve compassion, and it may be it's a hard thing to say, that statement, because our society designs in our psyches that we're meant to hate the people that do bad things. But do we hate the person, or do we hate the thing that they did? And I think really it's the thing that they did.
Well, and then a lot of
it's a hard one.
Yeah, a lot of healers and compassionate people end up in the trap of, well, I'm the only one who's nice to them, or they need me, or I can help them, without realizing that the best way to help people, I find, is to give them consequences. You know, if you do this, then this is what happens. There's no judgment. I'm not mad at you about it. However, if this, then that. And it's almost like a retraining. when we allow ourselves to be victimized, it teaches people that those behaviors are okay and they can victimize us. And we tend to think that I need to let them victimize me because they've had such a hard time. And it's the exact opposite. I've grown the most because people didn't cut me hardly any slack at all. You know, I was awkward. I didn't have good communication skills. I didn't have friends. I didn't know how to make friends. I didn't have any of that. And the normal societal reaction is, you're weird, we're staying away from you. And so I had to learn, oh, this is how you have a good relationship with someone. This is how you have social skills. You know, and it happened because I had to figure it out. And people weren't there saying, oh, it's okay that, you know, that you had a blow up. That's all right. It's no problem. You can do it again. It's because people said, if you're going to have a blow up, you're going to have to go over there because I don't want to deal with it. You know, it was like, well, if I don't want to be out by myself, I better figure this out. So tough love and boundaries and consequences are some of the best ways I find to love people, especially if it doesn't come from a place of anger or judgment. It's just like, I'm going to help you have better relationship skills. And if anybody's going to do it, I'd rather it be me because I love you, you know, instead of somebody who doesn't. And then they end up being sociopathic and trying to destroy your life. You know, so if I'm going to,
well, that's
I'm
true.
Teacher,
if people don't,
rather be me.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, that's true, you know, because I think a lot of sociopaths and narcissists are born out of, you know, being in environments where they've never known consequence. So then they go out in the world and, you know, they think that nothing's, you know, nobody can touch them. And, you know, it's so, and then reality hits that, you know, in the world, big wide world, there's consequences to your actions. And, you know, so, yeah, I think that there's underprotection when growing up, there's overprotection, and there's all spectrums in between. And, you know, I mean, we had a case in Australia I mean, we had a case in Australia of a guy. It was called the Port Arthur massacre, and you know, he's still in jail, and he grew up in, for what we heard, a very normal loving family, but it was just something in him that, and who knows what it was, you know. And so then, so you just have cases sometimes where, and I often think this is to do with soul contracts, you know, people are, what drives people sometimes is something much deeper than perhaps the conditions, you know. It's something in them. So I don't know. We could go on for hours about that one.
Well, absolutely, as to the causes of, and my out for that is, things are so complex that my little couple tablespoons of gray matter of my conscious mind will never be able to figure it out. You know, I read the other day that our conscious mind should be considered just another sense. And we give that sense, our thoughts, so much more power than they need. You know, it's our subconscious mind and our unconscious, which is doing 99% of the work. And our conscious mind's like the one taking all the credit for it. And so if we can, in its, you know, rightful place of conscious mind, you're just another sense. You know, you're not going to be able to figure this out. It keeps things in perspective for me. And I got that from a documentary with, I think, Morgan Freeman, going around to all these different religions and talking about.
I love that documentary. That's great.
This was
a great one.
The Meaning of God. Morgan Freeman, The Meaning of God. And it's like 6 different series, and he went around all these different religions with these different questions. And you know, this was one of the answers, that our conscious mind is one of our senses, and we need to not give it so much authority, you know, because it's so many other things which are creating this reality, besides our conscious mind,
Yeah.
that it's easier to be
So
like,
true.
oh, this is interesting. How did I get here? And what do I want to do next? You know?
Yeah.
Well, this
That's a
has
good point. No,
Mm-hmm.
it's been great.
This has been great. I'm thinking we could talk like this all day, and we should.
I know.
We should probably.
We should just do a marathon.
I know. We should probably wrap up for now. But I'm looking forward to. I haven't pulled together the interviews we're going to do around narcissism yet, but I'll be pulling them together within the next week or two. And
no worries.
Yeah.
And I'd love to have you as a guest on my show again because I love talking to you.
Yes, I would love to do that. Cool. So I'm gonna get going,
Awesome.
and I'm gonna sign off with you. And
No worries.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for.
It was
hanging
really
out
good
with
talking
me.
to you.
I know, it was nice talking
Oh,
to
I
you.
loved it. Absolutely.
Okay.
It's a pleasure.
Cool. So I'm gonna talk to you later. All right.
No worries, darling. Take care.
Bye.